All right, thank you very much. Certainly appreciate that. And boy, do I have the team with me. 30-plus years NFL insider Pete Prisco. How about Rick Spielman? 16 years with the Vikings, most recently 10 years as their general manager. You want to know how they stole Justin Jefferson? That guy did it, made that selection among others. And our draft expert, Ryan Wilson, is aboard as well. Pete and Ryan have come up with their final mocks, and you get to critique it. But let's take a look at what they decide to do with their top 10s in terms of their final draft. Some similarities, some differences between the guys. And right out of the gate, I always wonder, where's that focal point of the draft where we have to start paying attention because that's where a team could go either way. It's at number 1 this year. And you see, Ryan likes Trayvon Walker while Pete likes Ike Ekwonu. Ike could be the number 1 selection. If they go offensive line, it's just a matter you're going to go offense or defense. They both have Aiden Hutchinson at 2, staying in state, the Michigan product, going to Detroit. Then you also see the difference. Look, Pete has Kayvon Thibodeau going 4. Ryan doesn't even have him in the top 10. And then you look at the Giants who pick 5, and then again at 7. They have them taking the same 2 players, but not in the same order. But they think they're going to end up with Sauce Gardner and Charles Cross. Both of them have Evan Neal going to Carolina. No quarterback there. But Garrett Wilson, he'll be the wide receiver the Jets select at 10. That'll be their second of the top 10 picks. So you see some similarities and some differences. Let's get to it right out of the gate. The number 1 pick from Jacksonville. Ryan, is this just a matter of do you want to go offense or defense, or do you see the guy that you had at number 1 being an off the board? You can't not take him. He's your guy, number 1 pick.
Okay, this is how uncertain the whole draft process has been. I actually agree with Pete's pick of Ike Ekwonu. Going back to January, I had Ekwonu usually going number 1 to Jacksonville because, as Pete will tell you in a second, he feels a huge need. But I'm going with Trayvon Walker based on what we've been hearing and based on the betting markets. The betting markets are now minus money, which is crazy to think about, given the other needs that they have. They've taken an edge rusher in the first round in 2 of the last 3 years. Great players, Caleb Chason and Josh Allen. The team hasn't gotten measurably better. They need to protect Trevor Lawrence, obviously, and I'm making, again, Pete's case for him. But Trayvon Walker, he has the traits. We've heard the connection with Trent Baalke and how much he loves traits. Pete doesn't like the Trayvon Walker Aldon Smith comparison, but in terms of the traits, you can see why you might pass on an offensive lineman, why you might pass on an Aiden Hutchinson who feels certainly more polished right now, and take a Trayvon Walker. Even when we go back to that Aldon Smith draft, J.J. Watt was still there, Cam Jordan was still there, guys who are probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame. So Trayvon Walker, based on what I'm hearing and based on the feel of sort of the reports we're seeing, but EK, I agree with Pete. I think the offensive line makes sense.
There was a little movement on the betting market late last night toward Ekwonu, if you paid attention, and that's because there's infighting going on in that building, and you know how that goes sometimes. Trent Baalke wants Trayvon Walker. There's no question that's his guy. But the coach, Doug Peterson, wants an offensive lineman. So the question becomes, who is the tiebreaker and who wins that? And I think ultimately, you're going to see Doug Peterson win that. And you get Ekwonu. Here's why. The right tackle, Jawan Taylor, has been bad the last 2 years, and I'm talking about really bad. They can play Ekwonu at right tackle because they signed Cam Robinson to the 3-year contract extension. If you go to camp and you have competition and Taylor plays better, then you play Ekwonu at left guard and you have Scherf and Ekwonu at guards. That's a power offensive line.
Rick, you did this a long time. You've been in a lot of draft rooms. Is there any way Jacksonville still doesn't know who they're going to take the morning and afternoon of the draft?
There may be some questions today, and they may be going through it one more time. I know they're going to be talking to their ownership group on what direction they're going to go, so their ownership signs off. But I think it's going to go to the defensive side. They just extended Cam Robinson. They put a lot of money into Brandon Scherf, who they brought over from the Redskins. So that's a lot of financial commitment to that offensive line.
Do you think they know who they're taking right now, or might they still be undecided?
I don't know if they're still having the discussions between Hutchinson and Walker. Walker's such a unique athlete that he's 275 pounds, 6'5". He ran a 4.51 at the combine. His arm length is off the chart, so that's a huge, huge advantage. And then Hutchinson is probably the safest, surest pick to come in and make an impact immediately as a rookie.
Both of you at Hutchinson at number 2. Aiden Hutchinson, University of Michigan, pass rusher, going to Detroit, staying in the home state. Then we get to 3. And boy, Derek Stingley Jr. is a very interesting sort of case study. Seemed like he was going to go very high if he had gone in an earlier draft. Went back to LSU. Feels like the stock fell. Then at the workout, feels like now he's rising back up the draft board. Pete, who do you have at 3 and why?
Well, I don't have Stingley because, in large part, and you know this, because I think the traits of the guy who's doing the drafting and the guy who's the head coach there will tell you they probably won't pick a corner. Lovie Smith doesn't value the corner position in that defense. They value guys who can rush the passer. That's what he's always been. You look at Nick Caserio, comes from the New England Patriots. They don't value corner. They draft those guys and find them and develop them and then get rid of them and get another guy in the later rounds. So I don't think they're going to take a corner in that spot, which is why I went with a pass rusher. In this scenario, I have Trayvon Walker fall into him and they put him in that spot.
Ryan, you do have Stingley going at 3 to Houston with corner. Your response?
It's incredibly weird to, again, be on the same page with you, Pete, because I don't think you're wrong. And I got a call, I told you this a few days ago, from a source that said, there's a chance Derek Stingley goes 3. And my next question was ahead of Sauce, and he goes, I'm not sure about that, but I know that Houston likes him. So I reached out to a couple teams. Both teams said, we have heard the exact same thing. Houston loves Derek Stingley. But for the reasons that you laid out, I think it makes sense that you might go in a different direction. Lovie Smith likes that cover 2, Tampa cover 2. That doesn't necessarily mean you want to press corner, and they're doing the things that Stingley does. He obviously offers something in the return game. But I do sort of feel, EK, that he's taken an arc that we saw Jamar Chase take last year, his pre-draft arc, in that Jamar Chase opted out, obviously. Then he shows up at the combine, or his pro day, excuse me, and just lights it up. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, that guy's probably pretty good. We saw the same thing with Derek Stingley. Had the Lisfranc injury early on in the season, played 3 games, and then once he got back to his pro day, and by the way, he'd only been off out of the boot for 3.5 weeks, ran into the 4 threes, and everyone was sort of reintroduced to how good he could be. So does this feel like a stretch? Absolutely, but I think people in the league are seriously considering that it might happen.
I would say I've stretched and I pulled my hamstring on that pick. So there's going to be a pass rusher, because when you can rush the quarterback, that helps the corners. So if you're not getting any pressure on the quarterback, those corners can't cover the receivers at this level for 3, 4, 5 seconds. So you have to get the quarterback off the spot. You have to make the quarterback uncomfortable. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of these offensive linemen don't go. You see 3 pass rushers come off, 1, 2, 3.
All right, and then the Jets would be at 4. Jets have some needs, no two ways about it, and they have 2 picks in the top 10. Now, you both have them taking Garrett Wilson from Ohio State, wide receiver, at 10. But at 4, it's a very different look. Pete, you have Thibodeau going to the Jets. You don't even have Thibodeau in the top 10. You have him going at number 14. Look, this is a kid that out of Oregon last year, people say, no, coming into the year, he could be the number 1 overall pick. Now you have him at 14. You have him at 4. You have Jermaine Johnson going to the Jets at 4. Why Johnson?
Things I've been hearing. And again, EK, I keep repeating myself. I think that Pete is onto something. I like Kayvon Thibodeau here. It makes more sense for me. He's the better pass rusher. He's not as good against the run as Jermaine Johnson is. Jermaine Johnson transferred from Georgia because he didn't get playing time, and that's certainly understandable. That's, as we talked about, a fantastic defense. Went to Florida State, had the 12 sacks, and then he absolutely balled out at the Senior Bowl, ran incredibly well at the Combine, and I think that the Jets like him for sure. Do they like him at 4, maybe at 10? I think that's the question. We talk about the off-field concerns, however you define that for Kayvon Thibodeau, which still feels to me hard to get my head around when you talk to folks around the league. But I think they like Jermaine Johnson. They take him here. Although, Pete, I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Well, here's the thing. You look at Robert Saleh's defense. I think Thibodeau fits that defense better than Jermaine Johnson does. We can't get inside the head of Kayvon Thibodeau. We don't know what he's going to be on the next level. But when it comes to pure pass rush ability, he's the guy. He can bend. He's the one guy in this draft that can actually get around the corner and bend the corner. There aren't a lot of guys who can do that. Trayvon Walker can't do it. He hasn't done it yet. At least he hasn't showed he could do it. Hutchinson does it a little bit, but he's more of a technician, I think, than a guy who can just get around with his athletic ability. That's what Thibodeau is. I think he fits with Robert Saleh.
The biggest question on Thibodeau is, does he love football? And that's what you're seeing. And if you watch even some of the press conferences that he has done down here.
How big of a red? There are like maroon flags, and then there are bright red flags. How red is that flag when you have to say that out loud?
Well, those are the things that you're trying to test through your psychological testing to see, what is his passion for the game? Because regardless how talented you are, if you don't have passion for playing in the NFL and passion for football in general, especially if you're going to play up in front in the trenches, you're eventually going to get exposed.
So is he more 4 or 14 for you? Because I got one guy at 4 and one guy at 14.
He is more 4 from from an ability standpoint, but he's more 14 whether he loves football or not. And the one other point I want to make, Jermaine Johnson went to Eden Prairie High School with my kids. So Jermaine Johnson's been sitting in my living room since he's been a junior in high school. So I know the kid. He's a really great kid. He has a lot of ability, and he loves football.
Yeah.
How many times have you taken a guy, though, you weren't sure if he loved football, once he got in the league and he became a pro and he got that money in his pocket, he became a pro, or vice versa, a guy who thought...
More times than not, it's going to be vice versa, where he has all the ability in the world to be the top, but if you truly do not love what you're doing and you truly do not love, I don't care how much money you're making, that doesn't make you love football. It makes you love the NFL lifestyle, but you have to truly love the game to really excel and be the best you can be.
So when I hear, I'm not sure if he loves football, I can't take that guy at 4, right? I mean, that's not a guy. I can't risk that. That sounds to me like you're saying more often than not, that is not a guy that turns out to be a value pick or turns out to be a Hall of Fame, a gold jacket player, as they say, which is what I'm looking for in the top 5 overall.
Yeah, and I wanted to watch him, so I know he did his ankle, and I believe in the Fresno State game. I went to Ohio State. He did not play in that game, so the only tape I'm basing this opinion on is from his junior tape. And I've seen everything on what everybody's talking about, the athletic traits, the speed, the bend, the rush the passer, but I also seen a lack of effort. And I've always been a passionate guy about guys that love football and love to play hard.
There are a lot of the relationships that have gone sour with the idea going in. I can change them. I can change them. I can make them love it. Yeah, I don't know if that always works. Now, how about the Giants? Like the Jets, I mean, it's going to have a big New York feel if there's no trades in the top 10 because the Jets pick twice and the Giants pick twice. Giants pick at 5 and 7. Interestingly, you have them both taking the same 2 players, but 5 and 7 flip. Sauce Gardner, Cross, offensive line, Mississippi. So you have them going offense, defense, corner, trenches. When you see these 2 guys, why do you think you both landed on the same players, albeit in different order? Pete, you first on this one.
I'll start with Cross. All the information that you start hearing is that they love Cross. I mean, they might like Cross more than any of these tackles in this draft from what you hear.
Do you like Charles Cross?
I do, but I think my concern with Charles Cross is this. They have Andrew Thomas they drafted. He's a left tackle. They're playing him at left tackle. So can Charles Cross transition to play right tackle? When, there were comparisons of Charles Cross to Andre Dillard. Andre Dillard's not a right tackle because they played in the same style of offense in college. He's a left tackle. So I think he can, so I would pick Cross. And again, I could get Gardner in this spot, but when in doubt, if you're worried about somebody taking the guy in front of you, behind you, you have to take him right there, so I'll take Cross in that spot.
Yeah, and the only reason I switched to DK is because I didn't have an offensive lineman go in those first 4 picks, so I went with Gardner there. Stingley had already gone off the board, and clearly we think that's a need for the Giants there, so that's the reason I switched. But I think Pete's point's a good one, and I wanted to ask you this, Rick. So if you have someone like Andrew Thomas, he's developing his left tackle, even though he has right tackle experience in college, and you want to keep him there, why would you take someone like Cross, who didn't play right tackle in college, when you have Ike Kwanu potentially available, or even Evan Neal?
Well, I would either take the North Carolina State kid, Icky, or Evan Neal is by far, he can go over and play right tackle.
Right.
He's shown he can play right tackle. And the difference between him and Cross, in my opinion, was Evan Neal is a better run blocker.
Yeah.
He's got length, unique length. He can pass protect, but his athletic ability is okay on the left side, but his length helps him there. But if you put him on the right side and pair him up with Thomas, they got a heck of a 1-2 punch at their tackles.
There you go. All right, so that is a good look at the top 10. Whereas we said, Giants will pick twice, Jets will pick twice. You don't have a consensus number 1 right out of the gate with Jacksonville. Houston could go very different ways at 3. Detroit seems to be the one place where Aiden Hutchinson in Detroit seems to already be almost like paired up and a nice little match where the kid from the University of Michigan doesn't have to move very far down the road from Ann Arbor and then down to Detroit. Okay, so what about the rest of the draft? How about we take Rick Spielman, who's done 10 of these and had to make the pick for the Vikings, critique Pete Prisco's 11 through 20. What is he like, and where will he hammer him? That's straight ahead. Yeah, HQ presented.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.